So this week, a pop singer got arrested for allegedly murdering a 14-year-old girl whose body was found in the trunk of his Tesla. Ticketmaster officially lost their antitrust trial, and a jury called them an illegal monopoly. Real Housewife was allegedly planting a recording device in her ex-husband's Mercedes, and the cops found 98 recordings on it, one of which is apparently the sound of the bug going in. Andy Cohen is trying to get a lawsuit thrown out, but it's not working. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni go to trial in 5 weeks, and they're already fighting in pretrial motions, which PS is normal, but this is about Johnny Depp of all people. And Noah Beck, the TikTok star's sister, who was a high school teacher, has been recommended for termination after the school found out that she groomed one of her students. So, normal week. Welcome back to Exhibit A List, where pop culture gets cross examined. I'm Jasmine Wegg. I'm a New York attorney, and I am your legal bestie here on Exhibit A List, where we break down all of the stories that everyone's talking about, but nobody knows what's going on legally. Please check out the podcast, leave a rating, review, follow it, and follow me on Instagram, Jasmine Wegg ESQ, and TikTok, Jazz the Lawyer. Let's get into it. So, David, spelled D4VD, real name David Anthony Burke, 21, went viral in 2022 with a song called Romantic Homicide. The irony here is not lost on anyone. He was signed with Darkroom and Interscope, played at Coachella, released his debut album Withered last year, and he was on a world tour. On September 8th, 2025, workers at a Hollywood tow lot noticed a smell coming from a Tesla that had been sitting impounded for 5 days after someone reported it abandoned in Hollywood Hills. Police opened the trunk, which is called a frontal trunk on a Tesla, and found human remains of this little girl. She was reported missing in California in April 2024. Her family knew she had some connection to David. On April 16th, the LAPD arrested Burke at a Hollywood Hills home on suspicion of murder. He's being held without bail. The legal reality of his arrest right now is that there are no formal charges yet, but the case is being presented to the LA County DA for a charging decision. His attorneys immediately came out with a full statement saying that the factual evidence in this case will show that he did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez and that he was not the cause of her death. So these are very serious criminal defense attorneys he has on his back, and we're going to see what happens, but it does not look good. He's the lead suspect right now. The weird thing is that, as I mentioned, his song was called Romantic Homicide. I don't know what else to say about that except that the universe has a very dark sense of irony. And I do hope that there's justice for Celeste and her family because the story is harrowing. And it's just crazy to think that this young rapper is behind this. We'll keep you posted as the story unfolds. But shifting gears, I talked to you about Live Nation and their big lawsuit last week and how the DOJ secretly settled with them. But guess what? The states continued the case and we just got a jury decision. So, a quick history lesson because the context helps you understand the verdict a little better. In 2010, Live Nation merged with Ticketmaster. The DOJ allowed it, but they made them sign a consent decree, which is basically a promise to play fair and not use their combined power to crush the competition. By 2019, the DOJ came back and said, you guys violated this. They extended the agreement and made it stronger. Live Nation nodded, and then, of course, they just kept doing exactly what they were doing. Then in 2022, the Eras Tour, Taylor Swift, the site crashed, pre-sales vanished, and fans were waiting for hours and hours and got nothing. And we were hearing a lot about this Ticketmaster failure. Suddenly, the conversation that had been happening in the music industry became very public. Ticketmaster is a monopoly. You have nowhere else to go. That's the whole business model. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, filed a formal antitrust lawsuit in May 2024, and nearly 40 states joined. In other words, DOJ was one plaintiff, and then the 40 states were individual plaintiffs. And that matters because when the DOJ decided to do a settlement on their own with whatever deal they worked out, the states decided to remain in because they felt like the settlement was not good enough. Basically, the complaint asked for breaking the whole thing up, forcing Live Nation and Ticketmaster into separate companies. The trial started March 2nd in Manhattan. And 1 week into trial, the DOJ quietly negotiated a settlement with Live Nation without telling the judge. I mentioned this on last week's episode, and the judge was very upset by that. He found out when everyone else did, and he called it entirely unacceptable. The deal was $180 million, which is not a lot of money, I guess, for Ticketmaster, as well as some fee adjustments, but no breakup of the monopoly. 34 states looked at the settlement and said absolutely not. They kept going without the federal government on their own. During the trial, Live Nation's own internal Slack messages entered the record in which employees called buyers stupid in writing and said that they were being robbed blind when they bought tickets. Live Nation's lawyer walked out and said the game is not over by any means, which technically that's true. The verdict, which is the jury came back unanimous on every single claim and said that it is an illegal monopoly. They do overcharge consumers and they're violating antitrust laws. But as the lawyer said, it's not over yet because now is the remedies phase where the judge will decide what actually happens to them. Now, the states want a full structural breakup. That means they want to force Ticketmaster out of Live Nation entirely. What do you guys think? Do you think that that's necessary, or do you believe that every company should have the ability to get as big as they can and want to? Whether a judge orders that is genuinely uncertain at this point because structural breakups are rare. It's an extreme relief. But after 2 failed consent decrees and a unanimous jury verdict, the argument for just asking Live Nation to behave is not really strong because they don't seem to know how to. The former DOJ antitrust chief who got pushed out before this trial posted after the verdict, "You made antitrust history today. You fought the good fight, you finished the race, and you kept the faith." That's a federal official congratulating the states for finishing what their own agency walked away from. So right now, your next Ticketmaster fee isn't disappearing immediately. We're going to look at appeals, remedies hearings. This is all going to take time, as everything involving the law does. But a jury just confirmed what everyone was thinking in their head when they were checking out from buying a concert ticket. And now it's a court verdict. Moving on to Lisa Hochstein from Real Housewives of Miami and her 98 recordings. Okay, Lisa Hochstein just turned herself in to Miami-Dade jail on April 15th. The charge is interception of wire, oral, or electronic communications, which is a felony in Florida. Here's a setup. Lisa and her ex-husband, Lenny Hochstein, a Miami plastic surgeon known in certain circles as the boob god of South Florida, and no, I did not invent that, had a divorce that became extremely messy. It was finalized back in November 2024, and they have 2 kids. Back in 2023, during the divorce, Lisa asked to borrow Lenny's silver 2023 Mercedes Maybach. She said she was thinking of buying one for herself, and he let her take it. When he got it back, he found a digital audio recorder in the driver's seat floorboard. He went to police and also hired a private investigator. Police reviewed the device and found 98 recordings. Those recordings capture Lenny talking about the divorce, about the kids, with a woman described only as a woman friend, and with his medical patients. People who thought they were having a private conversation with their doctor. And then there's the recording that's going to be extremely difficult to explain away. One of the 98 allegedly captures the distinct sound of a device such as the hidden recorder being wrestled into place. So it's audio of someone installing the bug, allegedly on tape. Lisa's then boyfriend, Jody Glidden, was also charged and arrested last week. He's currently out on bond. Lisa was released on her own recognizance. Her attorney said, "This matter is part of a contentious divorce proceeding and does not belong in criminal court." That's a strategic framing to recast this as a messy divorce behavior, which it may be, but it also smells like a crime to me. Now, here's an important thing about Florida. It is an all parties consent state. That means that you can't secretly record anyone's private conversation. Not just conversations you're not part of, but even a conversation like I'm having a conversation with you, I can't record you according to Florida law without your consent. And in this case, there were 98 recordings taken without his consent, and some of them included his conversation with patients, which is very protected conversations. She's pleaded not guilty. We'll watch for what happens during her arraignment and whatever happens in this case next. Now we're going back to Leah McSweeney's lawsuit against Andy Cohen, Bravo, and related companies back in February 2024 because Andy Cohen is trying to get these claims dismissed. She sued Bravo and Andy because she said that Bravo pressured her to drink on camera knowing she had an alcohol use disorder and that producers colluded to push her toward relapse. She was discriminated against based on her disability and that she was also retaliated against when she tried to stay sober. She also alleged that Cohen used cocaine with cast members and rewarded those people with better edits. So Cohen has denied everything. He called the lawsuit a shakedown, and Bravo's argument is that Leah was an independent contractor and not an employee, which limits her workplace protections. But now the latest in this lawsuit is that Andy Cohen filed a motion to dismiss the remaining claims. He says they're too vague, they're time barred, which means it's too much time has passed according to the statute of limitations for each claim, and that whatever he did was protected as creative expression. That motion has not yet been decided. But here's the thing that just happened, and it's very interesting, and it's one of her biggest wins. So Leah was successful in getting this case to remain in court and not be moved to private arbitration, which Bravo was trying to do based on the contract clause in the contract she signed that said it had to go to arbitration. Leah actually posted about it. She said that for more than 2 years, the defendants have tried to have the case dismissed and later try to force it into private arbitration. This case stays public and in federal court. And then she said, reality television might look like entertainment, but behind the drama, there can be harmful misconduct that should never be normalized. Public court means discovery happens in the open. So that means we're going to see emails, texts, internal communications, potentially could all be visible. And it's quite interesting because it involves Bravo and Andy Cohen, and that's a little novel. I don't think we've seen that yet. Now, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni are heading on a fast track toward trial. As we know, they were unable to settle this case no matter how many times the judge brought them in for settlement discussions. So on May 18th, unless it gets adjourned again, they are headed to begin trial. Right now, both sides are already fighting over what the jury gets to hear before a single witness has even taken the stand. These are called motions in limine, and they're pretrial motions to exclude certain evidence. And each side is fighting over different things that can tell you a little bit about their strategy. Baldoni's PR team wants to block any mention of their past clients. So, specifically, we're talking about Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, Drake, Travis Scott, Logan Paul, Rebel Wilson. The argument is that Melissa Nathan's work for her other clients is irrelevant to whether she helped run a smear campaign against Blake Lively. Lively's side wants those clients in front of the jury because Nathan's firm was involved in crisis PR during the Depp Heard trial, a case that featured an alleged coordinated online campaign against Amber Heard. That's quite interesting because if you recall that during that lawsuit and when it was a very public trial that was being recorded, now I'm not saying about who was right or wrong, but I do know that there was a very severe and clear shift of sides, and everyone was against Amber Heard. Similar to how everyone immediately shifted against Blake Lively. Now, I'm not saying that there's definitely this smear campaign. I'm going to let the evidence speak for itself because we're going to hear about it quite soon. But it's interesting. Lively's attorney's argument will be that there's a pattern here. That is the evidence. That this is what the firm does. And here's proof because they've done it before. And that's a legitimate evidentiary argument under federal rules. And the judge is just going to have to weigh whether the pattern evidence is probative, which means indicative enough of this being true, whether it's probative enough to outweigh the prejudice to the defendant. Because obviously, it's going to make Baldoni and the other defendants look bad and change the view that the jury will have if they know that they've done this smear campaign on other famous people before. Now, on Lively's side, she wants her net worth and Ryan Reynolds' net worth to be kept out completely, because she argues that once a jury hears someone is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, the subconscious question becomes, would she need damages? She doesn't want that energy in the room. She also wants Jenny Slate and Isabella Ferrer, two other women who had issues with Baldoni on set, allowed to testify. Baldoni's side is fighting that as well. Ryan Reynolds is also on the witness list. So is Colleen Hoover, author of the source novel. What's happening in these pre-trial motions is almost as important as the actual trial itself, because it determines what story the jury hears. Now, personally, I want it all in. I want her net worth in because I want to know it. I want Jenny Slate. I want to hear from her. I certainly want to hear from Colleen Hoover. I want to know about any other smear campaigns that happened. I just want all the evidence out there. If Justin Baldoni didn't do any of this, let's hear all the evidence and let's decide. I just want to know. We've been hearing about this for so long. Please, judge, allow it all in for all of us. Now, I want to talk about a story that I honestly learned about through TikToks, because there are these super sleuths. That's the only way I could describe them. They're basically Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys on TikTok. And these TikTokers are incredible. So, the story, Haley Beck, Noah Beck, the famous TikToker who has 36 million views, his sister was found to be having an inappropriate relationship with a student. She's a high school teacher. And the reason I found out about this story is that these Nancy Drews on TikTok, they have read thousands upon thousands of text message threads that were admitted into evidence in the police investigation into Haley Beck. And they've gone through in painstaking detail. They do deep dives into Haley's past, learned about what she was like in high school, dug up recordings of her by students in the class. And it's just like investigative research happening in real time. So I had to research the story myself because it was so wild and learn what's going on. Noah Beck, the TikToker, has a sister, Haley, 27, and she was a high school psychology and sociology teacher in Peoria, Arizona. And I say was because the school district has recommended her for termination after finding out that she groomed a student and had an inappropriate relationship with him. The school's own documentation included that it started in December 2024 when she let a student borrow her car keys to get Christmas presents from her car. By spring 2025, she was giving him food, bumping up his grades, doing his homework. She added him on Snapchat under the name Sneaky Link. Over the summer, she allegedly exchanged 4,000 texts with him about extremely inappropriate things that I'm not going to give details of because we're talking about a minor. Even though the content of this stuff is definitely not PG-13, this is a child. And at the time, he was 15, 16. So I don't want to go into details about what actually they did because it's disturbing. But this is, she was a pedophile, and there is definitely a stigma or a misconception that people imagine these perpetrators as only male. And this is a case of a female doing it. And I think there might be some lack of sympathy for the victim when it's a male student, but there is no difference in my eye. She sent him money on Apple Pay. She incriminated herself in so many of these documents that she exchanged. She even wrote on a transaction where she sent him money that this money exchange feels like straight prostitution. She called herself his sugar mama and him her sugar baby. Super disturbing. Now, the school's Title IX investigator wrote that since grooming did occur, any conduct after that date of consent is unwelcome. Within the teacher-student relationship, the behavior is also severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. Police sent their findings to the Maricopa County attorney to decide whether criminal charges are supported. They have not been filed yet. Her attorney says she's committed no crimes. Wild, because we have the documentation of all the crimes, and I don't understand how you can even say something like that. Two separate tracks are running here. The school's investigation is done. They found grooming occurred and recommended termination, and they used a civil standard. It's about whether she gets to keep teaching, and she almost certainly doesn't. But the second track is the criminal investigation, and that's a much higher standard. Because we are talking about incarcerating people in general, criminal standards are much higher and they require beyond a reasonable doubt. I still can't see how that wouldn't be reached since all the evidence is right there. Early on, police said that the initial concerns didn't meet the threshold, though, for reasonable suspicion. Then more came in and they escalated it to the county attorney. In Arizona, this kind of conduct with a minor is a serious felony, and positions of trust, like a teacher student relationship, carry extra weight. The school already said grooming happened. Whatever comes next in criminal court is a separate question. We're going to follow it, moderately because it's kind of disturbing, but I'll keep you posted. That was episode 30. Hope you enjoyed our deep dive into some wild stories that happened this week. It's almost like the law took center stage in Hollywood. If this episode gave you something that the headlines didn't, which I truly hope it did, please share it. Share it with anyone who needs a legal POV in their life. Leave a review. It genuinely helps. And don't forget to screenshot yourself listening to the podcast. I'll repost it on my Instagram. Court is adjourned. Stay curious, friends. See you next week.